Good morning and welcome to Open Source Workplace Daily. Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Steve. Big day today, Thursday.
Thursday.
Washington National today. Here he
There you
is.
go. There you go.
Well, Max Scherzer takes the mound in against the Yankees, New York Yankees. So
Oh wow, big day then. Big day.
we're back. Sports is back, so I'm excited, and um, it's going to be weird. No crowds. How's it been going with your soccer club? Watching them with no audience. Has it been okay?
It's been okay. You can actually see that the performance intensity of games isn't quite what it would be with supporters there. The supporters sort of push and drag things along. When I say drag and push things along, what I mean is, they drive that extra 10%, 20%. It's a bit like, I think the science shows when you listen to music when you're exercising, there's
Oh
17%
yeah,
more effort goes into it. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of the
noticeable.
soccer. So it'd be interesting to see
Wonder
what the
if it'll be the
baseball's like,
same.
but
Yeah.
not that baseball has, the same type of atmosphere, but.
And baseball is a little different because it's a lot of individual action as opposed to, a lot of running around all the time, like
Right,
on the
right,
on
right.
the soccer pitch. I was gonna wear this morning, but it's too darn hot here in DC. But here you go, my world champion
There you go.
Nats logo. So we got a
Nice.
short season to defend the title, and we'll see how it goes. I'm just happy to have something to watch that's live sports. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm also looking
Good.
forward to talking to you today. Lots of exciting things on the
Yeah.
agenda, I see.
Lots of stuff, and the agenda sort of kind of covered it in a wide scope. But I think the underlying thing that sort of goes through my head, Mike, as I looked at these articles this morning, the question that sort of recurred to me is: do we put too much value on the office, and do organizations need to shift their mindset on what the office is to be in a future? And we're going to dig into the sort of the reasons for that in a couple of these articles, and then also then look at some of the new technologies that are sort of coming down the pike. So a
Right.
lot to cover today, a lot to cover, but very
I'm
very
excited.
interesting. And I'm going to kick it off, Mike, with a poll that was done by Perry Timms. And what he did was he did this poll. He put these questions out on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and he gathered the results and he sort of presented the results. And I really like one how he positioned the questions. Um, so where do you want to work? 100% virtual, 100% office. Then he did this nice split, so 60-40 office to virtual, or 80-20 virtual to office. And what was quite stunning actually was 1.5% wanted to be in the office 100% of the time, which is just like
Woohoo! Yeah.
staggering. But then 56%, almost 57%, want to be in the office basically 1 day a week. In other words, it's almost like I'll go in, but actually my preference is to stay at home. And how then do we take that? And that's sort of where my question is, are we putting too much value on the office? And do we then have to rethink about, well, what is the purpose of the office? And do are organizations putting too much value on the actual office and what employees want?
Well, we need to rethink about it for sure. Whether
Yeah.
we put too much value on it, I think it's a matter of now really defining what that value is. And we've tried to do that a little here. I've done it on my podcast, on my live streams. And why do we go to the office? What are we missing during this pandemic life, this quarantine life, where we have not been interacting in person in the office? We've been pretty functional. We've been pretty productive, most of us.
Hmm.
And the fact is that a lot of us do now want to be at home and could see that we could be functional at home. But there are things we're missing, and I think we've had some great, much more thoughtful workplace experts than you and I talk about this. And the thing that keeps coming back to me time and again is work is what you do. It's not where you are.
Hmm.
It's not a place. So we keep talking about workplace. It's in the title of my show. It's in the title of your show and website. But workplace can be anywhere. And human beings are doing their work now anywhere and everywhere and all the time.
Yep.
So the mobile world, and this was happening.
So I think what you're saying, Mike, you kind of just cut out there. So I think what you were saying is that this was happening before the pandemic, and therefore we'd seen the trend, and therefore that trend will probably continue. COVID's actually allowed us to change the perspective for the employer to see the perspective and employees to see the perspective. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. But the conclusion that sort of came from that Perry drew was, flexibility is so important, and flexibility will allow us to then move forward and actually attract talent as well. It's going to be interesting to see where this all evolves. But I do think we have to sort of think back and sort of ask that question, what is the value we put on work? What is the value, not work, but the office? And as you think about the cost base of what an office is, and as we think about, I'm just losing Mike here, so it's kind of like we've just lost him. He's just gone. He's just decided to bail on us today, but I'm sure he'll join us momentarily. We just have to get a little bit of patience, and here he comes. So there we go. Mike's trying to get in, but for whatever reason, we're unable to connect with him today. Oh, here he comes. Back in. Hey, there we go, man. The beautiful thing of being live, you just got to love it. But honestly, what I feel is, I know you were going somewhere that was so good, man, and we missed it. That's what I feel bad for. I did my best to fill in the gap.
I bet you did. I apologize.
No.
In the heat of the DC summer, we've had a lot of power glitches and so forth, but what was the last thing you heard me say, Steve?
Nationals. I just assumed that you'd had enough, and you went, no, I'm going to get myself set up and get my popcorn ready, get my corn dogs ready, all the rest of it,
It's about those poll results. But the bottom line is, work is what we do. It's not where we are. Those poll results don't surprise me. I've heard a lot of great people talk about it. The expertise is out there. We need to be giving our employees choice, flexibility, and rethinking the value of the workplace, and bringing it all together.
So what is different with this, though, Mike, and it's something we need to consider, is, so Perry isn't in the real estate world. He's not a workplace, he's an HR professional. So his company provides services for HR folks. So is the poll coming from a different population to the typical population that you and I would interact with? So I just find that element that we have to sort of bring that to it as well. But staggering, the 1.5%, 100%, that's really low. I haven't seen anything as low as that. And that really surprised me.
And we do this with our this or that poll questions. You've got to choose one or the other. He only gave 4 choices, so he admitted, rightfully so, that he boxed people in. But it's true. It's a clear indication that times are changing, and this pandemic has totally accelerated things that were happening before, and that people were hesitant to change because human beings are slow to change. But because of the forced work from home situation and escape from the office and exodus from the office, everybody's rethinking things. And now as workplace leaders and as real estate leaders, we have to partner with our friends in HR. I had this conversation a couple weeks ago on my live stream with 2 HR professionals, and I asked who's going to take the lead on this, because work is now everywhere. We need to manage our people and help them bring their best selves to their organizations wherever they happen to be working from. And we need to extend the workplace experience, or the work experience, or the user experience, employee experience, I guess is probably the best way just to say it generically. And that could be from home, it could be from a co-working space, a hub, a coffee shop eventually, or occasionally in the office, in the headquarters building. So all fascinating things, but you're right, people are different now than they were 4 or 5 months ago, that's for sure.
And then we take what you just said, Mike, and we take this poll, and then you sort of ask the question, so how do employers, or how do offices, or how do buildings then attract people, right? Because if this is the psychology, or this is the emotion that people are sort of feeling right now, how do they then take that and actually attract people back to the office? And this is an article that was posted in the Smart Cities World you sent through, why smart and healthy buildings will get us back to work and play faster and happier. And and a lot of what's been raised in the actual content here, Mike, is kind of, I think a lot of it's happening already. in the sense of technology is evolving, technology is allowing us to create healthier and happier workplaces. And I think there are certifications coming through, but it's all about that emotional connection, right? So employees today are home, they feel safe, they feel secure. So how do they move from that safe environment to another safe environment? Andrew Mawson's taught me over the last few months, it's like how safety really is embedded in our human instincts, right? That flight or fight fear factor. So how do we then move from one safe place to another safe environment? And the way you do that is you provide information, right? And basically, I love what I took away from this is, okay, so can you create tools that communicate to the users of the building how air is clean, when was the last time it was actually the surfaces have been cleaned, how clean is the water, how do you tell people, how do you allow people to get that experience, to get that feeling of comfort? Now obviously the office is one thing, the home is another thing, and getting from one to the other is probably the biggest challenge that we have. So how do then people get comfort that actually that commute is actually going to be the same, it's going to be clean, it's going to be safe. How do we do that, and how do we bring all that information together? So that was the main thing that that resonated with me as I read it.
Yeah, you froze on me again there for a second, Steve, but yes, I think you're on the right track here, and this article is interesting to me, especially the idea of communicating the safety of a facility. I don't know about the commute getting there and back and so forth, but if you're talking about public buildings, I'm actually having a webinar today with a representative from the International Well Building Institute. So the WELL certification is a standard we might be able to look to help us get there. And then obviously the technology to allow to clean the air and to demonstrate to people that they are entering a safe place is something very important to us because of, as Andrew Mawson said, the psychology of it all, which I am fascinated with as well. But I love the idea of, we got to basically put it out there and communicate it. Maybe a Yelp rating system or a Google stars that show, as you walk into a facility, this air quality has been tested and the technology is there to say this is a healthy place to be and give people the comfort they need going forward. But as far as using technology, that was the takeaway from this article for me, is that, yes, we all recognize that healthy workplaces are important, and even more so now during a pandemic. But we've also been talking about smart building technology, and there's so many incredible tools out there and applications and ways to interact with the building for users as we walk in, making frictionless experiences. Obviously, I work for a company that's trying to contribute to that world of technology at iOffice. So how do we then make these buildings smarter to give people the comfort and the security they need going forward? Mm. And it's just, again, it's that accelerant. It's moving things along faster. How do we afford to do this? How do we afford not to do it is the question now.
Yeah, and another point Glenn Lurie actually raised in this article was the ability to recruit and retain talent. So in other words, if you create this safe environment, that therefore will allow you to retain staff, retain talent, but also recruit, because you're able to market, socialize, call it whatever you want, that allows people to see the environment that you're creating and then feel safe. And we spoke yesterday about millennials and how they want to buy into an ethos, a value system, and this also helps an organization demonstrate the value system of how they see their employees and their building. And I think the challenge with a lot of this is, especially when you get to big cities like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, etc., London, go across the world, is most businesses operate in a building or a portion of a floor within a large building. So therefore it's you may be able to protect your own environment, but then there's this community that is within the building, and then therefore it's probably going to come down to, okay, what landlords and what buildings are actually adhering to these standards, who are building to these standards, who are implementing these standards as well. Will that also influence where organizations choose to go and lease space in the future? And I could see that certainly being a factor, and I'm sure that's something that will come up in your chat later today with Well Building Standards.
Yeah, it's a competitive advantage, right? That's what they've been trying to tout it as to begin with. The building owner, who may have multiple tenants, they're trying to attract those tenants, and having their building be well certified is a competitive advantage. And this article goes into more ways to separate your building from others and attract people now just to return to public spaces. Do you have any experience? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know too much about the WELL standard. I know that there has been the LEED certified buildings for many, many years that I saw. You see the plaque on the modern buildings that are LEED certified. It's more of a sustainability standardization, but this WELL certification has been around for quite a while now. Has it been something you've explored as a real estate leader, or is it not something that's been of interest to you?
It's something that's very, very much front of mind. And it actually, the LEED certificate, or the WELL building certification, sort of came around 2015, 2016 when I was doing a deep dive into workplace strategy. So a lot of the research they did in creating the certification actually I found really fascinating because it tied in nicely what I was doing. So I've followed the WELL building certification since then. I think the challenge with WELL building certification is the process you go through to get certified. It's arduous. And the challenge is the ROI in getting the certification. I absolutely 100% believe in the recommendations and the intent of what is trying to do. But and if you go back to what was LEED trying to do, LEED was trying to change property owner mentality in creating energy efficient buildings. And right. WELL building, if they're doing the same thing about the actual occupants, then again it's trying to achieve a really good thing. So yes, some buildings absolutely have pushed for WELL certification. Other buildings are just adhering to their standards. So it is a tough thing to balance because it is not an easy process to go through. It is not a cheap process to go through either. But I think it is a really, really good standard. And
Should I ask that question today? Should I put them on the spot and say, hey, I've heard from my friends in the industry, because I've heard this same argument from other people. Kay Sargent said it. Other people have said that the standard may well be everything but certified. You know, those recommendations are great, but there's something about the certification process, like you said, could be a hurdle too far or a wall too tall to climb. So I'll put them on the spot and ask them. It's Angela Spangler from there in New York City. Wonderful person I met during one of my visits up towards Workplace Week, during Workplace Week, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
So great leader. She's going to put a presentation on. I'm excited to hear about it. I'm excited to learn. And I don't want to make her uncomfortable as my guest, but at the same time, this is a good question. I'm sure they faced it and they have a good answer for it, I'm sure.
Yeah. I just give them the heads up before you ask it.
Yeah, that's right.
They may not appreciate, but no, I think it is important, and I encourage everybody, irrespective of your opinions on my opinions. I still speak favorably of it. I still look at it as the benchmark. I still look at it as the sort of light into where this is going. So I still encourage people to go and look at it. So the next one thing we're going to talk about, Mike, is, and I didn't realize we'd actually talked about this lady before.
Really?
Only a couple of weeks ago, as we sort of dig into, Dr. Susan David, The Art of Emotional Agility. Yeah, and what I find interesting is actually it's a completely different YouTube video. But again, this is the wonderful thing that I've said to you before I love about YouTube. You watch something, you engage with something. YouTube is really good at finding content that's very similar and then allows you and throws it in front of you, right?
Those stories.
Yeah, so although we've spoken about some of interviews that Dr. Susan David has given, this is a little different. And this is talking about the art of emotional agility. Now, this interview was done 2 years ago. But as I listened to it...
Oh, really?
I guarantee you, had I listened to it 2 years ago, my understanding or interpretation of what was being said would be very, very different. 2 years ago, she said, uncertainty is the only certainty. Right? 2 years ago, that would have meant something really different to what it means today. And what I loved about, and I took pages of notes as I went through and watched this video. It's like I'm kind of stupid as I do a lot of this stuff, Mike. Stupid in the sense of I really do this in a lot of detail because I was absorbed in what she was saying. And what I took away from it, sorry, and I sort of hesitated as I was trying to move things around off the screen.
Sure.
What I loved about it was, we get emotions and we get feelings, but we brush over them so quickly that we don't take the time to think, why am I feeling this way? What is causing me to feel this way? And then how do I, one, change the outcome, perspective, the triggers, whatever that is. And she gives the example of, I'm unhappy at work. And, she goes, we're unhappy at work, but actually most people today may be saying, but at least I've got a job, right? That may be the quick answer we give to ourselves. I don't like my boss, but I need the money. I don't like this project, but whatever, right? And we do this and we just feel it, but we don't take the time to sit back and actually go, well, why are we unhappy at our job? Is it the work? Is it the development I'm not getting? Is it my relationships with the team, with my manager? Is it the values of the organization? What are the things that we're doing, and actually taking those moments to actually understand the cause, understand the triggers, actually allows us to actually see ourselves and help ourselves live a healthier life. She doesn't say a better life. She doesn't say anything. She's very, very careful, obviously, in the words that she's choosing. And a lot of this comes from, and it comes out early in the actual interview, is things that she went through as a child and the questions that she started to see, her behaviors. And she basically said that this journey for her started on a death of a family member and her writing down the emotions that she was going through as an 8-year-old. So a teacher actually took her through and asked her to do this, and it just taught her a very valuable lesson that pausing and taking a moment is really, really beneficial. And as I said, look, I just took a snippet of what was in this 1 hour long interview, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah, no, me too. In fact, the fact that you just told me this was recorded 2 years ago, in my hurried rush to kind of capture a little bit of it before talking with you this morning, I just started listening to the first several minutes of it, and it sounded absolutely appropriate for the times in which we are living today. I thought it was recorded recently because they were talking about difficult times and challenging times and times of uncertainty, and I thought this is a recent recording. But the fact of the matter is, this is a great topic of emotional agility, and all those things you just mentioned, I won't repeat them, are true in my experience as well, especially here in the American culture. And maybe it's a family thing, how I was raised, the culture of my relationships and so forth. But you always put on a happy face, right? That's you don't show your emotions. It's are you okay? Of course, yes,
right,
I'm fine.
Right.
And we all do that in our society. We do it in work. We do it with our colleagues and our friends. Very rarely when someone says, are you okay? And you're not, do you say, well, no, I'm not. I'm struggling with this, that, and the other. Let me get into it, because most people don't really want to get into it with you. They just want to have that kind of polite interaction. So I love the topic. I love her accent. I think she's from Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
South Africa.
It's South Africa. Okay,
yeah,
I always get those.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities there. But it sounded great, and recommend the video. I'm going to go watch it myself, the full thing. But well, what's wrong with showing a little emotion? I think if anything, this time of collective crisis and struggle that we've had during the pandemic has opened us up to the idea of, listen, we need to be optimistic. Let's be optimistic. Let's share that inspirational optimism, as Simon Sinek says. But we don't have to be positive all the time. You don't have to always have a happy face on.
Right.
You can have emotions. You can have down days, bad days, tough days. We all do. And we have to understand that. And I think we are becoming more understanding of each other, more empathetic as leaders.
I 100% agree with you. And it is important that, and she does stress this, and I'm glad you raised it, like, we don't have to be happy all the time, because we never will be happy all the time. And actually, it's those moments of weakness, those moments of uncertainty, of stress that actually resonate with us more, change and alter our behaviors. And it's a really good thing. So I encourage people to go and take a quick listen or watch. So the last thing I want to touch on, were you going to say something there, Mike? Or?
No, get a lesson while you listen.
Okay.
I was going to say you're both right. You didn't misspeak at all there, Steve.
Too kind. So the last one is, it's kind of a shift in what we've been sort of looking at, and what we've been sort of thinking about. And I was going to see if I could play this video that sort of demonstrates this product. This is a brand new product that has just come out. Well, I say just come out. It's in development, and it is basically a 3D window that you can watch and observe without the use of 3D glasses. And there are a series of images that you can go through and see. So what you're seeing right here on the screen, and these two images that I just snapped from their website, this is like on a wall, this would be your view, as if you've got a window on a wall in your office, home, or wherever. And obviously this is being geared towards gamers. It's been geared towards architects and designers, as you think about the office and how to use space. If you've got those enclosed interior rooms with no access to the outside world, well, perhaps this can be used. And obviously this would then probably transform into a TV, a monitor, whatever it is for video conferencing. But then in a real world, this gives you the ability to see. And how it works is, as you look at it, it sees where your eye is and adjusts the depth and the vision of what you see and the angle of what you see. So it's really, really, really smart technology. I love it.
Pretty crazy stuff, and really cool. And I've seen this in science fiction movies, right?
Right,
this type of technology where you're on a spaceship or you're on some isolated place where you don't have access to these things, but the immersiveness of a video technology allows you to believe you're in the open countryside or by a beautiful ocean or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think this is pretty impressive and exciting to see this technology is available and on the horizon for us. It's funny, I just had this conversation yesterday at the end of my live stream. We were talking to anthropologists yesterday and other facility management leaders, and the big takeaways for me was, people are in need of certain things, and human beings behave a certain way. And I brought up the movie Back to the Future. You remember this movie, Michael J. Fox and Doc Brown and the traveling DeLorean, right? Time traveling DeLorean. So the interesting thing to me was in that movie, because it still holds up pretty well. It was back in 1985 where he traveled back in time, as Huey Lewis in the News said, "I'm going to get back in time." And he goes to 1955 when his parents were teenagers. And then at the end, Doc Brown takes it into the future 30 years to 2015, which is now, in our past, which is 5 years ago. And it's so funny. In 1985, we watched that movie and we saw this vision of 30 years from now. And we thought, okay, flying cars, and he doesn't need the nuclear, power anymore because he just uses Mr. Fusion. He uses garbage to power his time machine. And the idea of the next two movies, which I wasn't as big a fan of, the Back to the Future 2 and 3, was that the future is like this crazy world of flying cars and fantasy that we often attribute to our mind when we think about the future. Like 30 years from now, Steve, though, I think we now know that reality is, yes, new technologies will become immersive. If you thought of the iPhone or some of the video displays we see in big cities, Times Square, for example, take a snapshot 30 years ago to today. It's a huge difference, that video technology. But there's still people walking around. There's still buildings everywhere. I don't see cars flying, although that, they say that's coming too. I think we're going to see a world in which the humans that are operating are still the same. We're still people, and we still have the same emotions and needs and so forth. But technologies like this one you just shared with us, and it's going to be part of our world. It's going to be something that we're used to at that point, and how it impacts us in a broader way is going to be interesting to see. One of my guests said it's going to be different. He says we're on the cusp of things where people could be sitting in their homes, living virtually like they're in the Matrix. I don't know. Do you have a thought on that? Do you think is it closer than I think? Because I use this experience with Back to the Future and think, it's so far off. It's not going to really happen that quickly, and we will be 30 years from now, and yes, it'll be different, but it'll be similar to today.
No, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. And if you think about some of the conversations we've had over the last, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, Mike, and you sort of take a thread, right, and you run it all through. So you take today, we have just taken...
It's a red thread?
It's a red thread, of course Steve? It is. Of course it is, as we've learned. But if you take what you just said, you take about some of the conversations we had earlier today, you then take about what we have spoken about, communities getting smaller and tighter, and people don't want to travel. And then you take that and then you build all that up. I think it is fair to say that we're actually going to become a smaller interactive physical interaction, but a broader online interact. I'm trying to think of the right word,
Experience.
but experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Where we will probably operate in a smaller, tight space, and therefore we're going to use this type of technology to actually promote ourselves. But you go back to Future, and it's funny. I watched it not so long ago, and I was
Really?
watching it. It's 2015, man. That was 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
you're watching that. It's just not that many things are right, but it's just I remember watching it back in the day, going, that was such a long time ago. Or that's
Right.
such so far
Right.
forward. Like 2015 was like such a far off
Yeah.
thing,
And
But
you believe that that's possible, yeah, that's going to be the future.
yeah,
That's a great point, Steve. And I think, you and I have been kind of talking about this even at the beginning of the pandemic, as all conferences and all these things that we're so used to were being canceled. I said, somebody's going to come up with a technology that replaces that experience. And, with this technology and others, creative minds, innovative minds, they're going to come up with things that allow us to have these experiences with each other virtually. And maybe it does replace the need to travel as much and the need to get together and risk exposure to not just COVID-19, but future viruses that we're told are certainly part of our future. So it will be interesting to see. And I want to stay optimistic about the whole thing and be open to these ideas and never say never, because I've made that mistake before. I've never said, why would you need that technology? Why do you need a TiVo? That's my famous one back in the early 90s or maybe late 80s when the first video recorders came around. Why would you need to record live TV? Just watch the game, why don't you?
I know.
I realized I was wrong about that.
I know. Fascinating. But Mike, great conversation, and
Always.
if you've managed to watch it all the way through, thank you. And also, if please let us know. So we know right at the outset we asked, do we put too much value on The Office? What is your thoughts? What is your opinion? Let us know. It's an open question. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just an opinion. It's just a thought, and really love to hear from you. But Mike, thank you for today, and we will be back on Monday. And go enjoy your baseball, man. I hope you have a wonderful day with it, mate. Take care,
Thank you,
man.
sir.
Cheers.
Talk to you
Thanks.
later.
Bye.